Burnout, especially for women, is a real thing. And we've had more than one guest on the show sharing their experiences of it. It's pretty well acknowledged that workloads are becoming increasingly demanding and that there are often disproportionate demands on women. Thankfully, the stories we've heard are from women overcoming burnout, and their stories have us feeling uplifted and empowered. Preventing the negative impacts of stress and overwhelm are essential for our health and well-being and need to be taken seriously. With the support and guidance and expertise from coaches like our guest today, Marie Young, we can learn how to make a positive impact in our professional as well as our personal lives. Marie is a stress management coach, life coach, embodiment teacher, and a body resilience mentor. She's been teaching yoga and meditation for over 20 years and has experimented with many different healing modalities, most recently studying toning the ventral branch of the vagus nerve to reduce stress and create a sense of well-being in the body. Before teaching and coaching, she worked in both corporate America and professional acting. Marie is a certified professional coach who specializes in helping people reach their peak mental performance. And for more than 20 years, she's taught her innovative meditation, stress management, and productivity techniques to audiences around the world, including at companies like Facebook, Apple, and Amazon, to name but a few. Marie, thank you so much for joining us today. How are you?
I feel great after that intro. Let's record that.
Good.
Thank you so much. Yeah. Feel almost giddy. I'm doing really well. It's great to be on your show. Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you for being here. We had a couple of hiccups getting ourselves organized, but we're here today. Do
Yep.
you want to tell us, give us a little, I mean, I just kind of did an intro, obviously. So do you want to fill in any gaps? Is there anything I missed or that you want to add to that little intro, or do you just want to get stuck in?
Yeah, no, I thought that was really comprehensive. Yeah, I think it was great. We can just as a reminder to myself, I we can definitely talk about the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. That's something I'm really enthusiastic about. I think single-handedly that's been what's given me the most bang for my buck, in terms of stress management and reconnecting. So yeah, I would say let's focus on that whenever is a good time.
Yeah, cool. That sounds good. And I've got that written down in my notes actually. So I'm going to save it.
Cool. Yeah.
The big
It's
bit.
a fun bit for the end, maybe, for the big finish.
Tell us a little bit about your story because you
Wow.
have an original like 20 years ago, I guess, and maybe more recently, you have a background in acting, but like
Mm,
you suggest in some of the material that I've read on your website that you were overwhelmed, you were stressed, and potentially a little bit unfulfilled with what this,
mm.
a seemingly good job and successful, life to people on the outside may look. But yeah, you were experiencing those things. So, like, what was that like for you? And like, how did you segue into what you're doing now?
Oh, golly.
Just a little question to
No,
start
it's
us off.
just so small. I'll start with origin story.
Hmm.
So my family is like on both sides. I come from agrarian roots, I guess. Not my generation, but a couple generations back on both sides, like, farmers. My mom's mom was first generation Irish American, which I think is a little unusual. And so, just, kind of almost right off the boat. And my dad's family had, they were farmers and school teachers, for a long time. So, and I've sort of started looking at that as I think as women and probably men as well, but I think as women, especially when you become a mom, like you're very interested in your lineage and where you come from and and passing that on and giving that information. At least for me, that's my experience. So, what I was finding with that, and what I would listen to my mom's and my grandmother's talk, that there was some sadness in our family, on both sides, I think commonly referred to as depression. That did sort of carry over. Some of that may have been biological, some of it, in large part was circumstantial. You can sort of point to the differences. And um, in my lifetime, I think kind of the big, maybe sort of psychic wound, or, what sort of was hard for me, kind of put me on the healing path, was my mom and dad divorced, and we relocated about 1,000 miles away from everything that I've known. And it was a big city, and my mom had to go to work. So, I effectively kind of lost both parents. But because we're strong stock, we, we figured out a way to kind of bootstrap and grit through it. I did. But in my 20s, I think, is when it caught up to me. So, there was, some real depression and kind of malaise, and, the education system over here, at least when I was going to school, is it's good, and I went to good schools, but it doesn't really teach how, kind of what we're referring to now as self-care.
Mm.
And really, knowing thyself. You can know what you're good in at school, but it doesn't necessarily translate to taking care of yourself and treating yourself not just as, intellectually gifted or sports gifted. So that did lead me to the self-development books, or as they were called, self-help. And then that eventually, in around 2000 and 2001, yoga got really big, I think worldwide in the West, and especially here in Austin, the Austin area. And so when I took really my first yoga class, I had just had a huge aha moment. Just in terms of it, it did something to my nervous system, which I think back to the ventral branch of the vagus nerve, it works that. And also the breath work, it reconnected me to, I think, what you could call the higher self. And that's what part of what yoga does is, it's translated, it means to yoke. And it yokes the individual with the divine. It yokes body, mind, and spirit. It is an integrative practice. And so that just kind of set me on a course for my work today. And I taught yoga for a good many years, and then that segged into meditation, which offered an even deeper experience with breath and breath work. And those two really influenced me in terms of developing my own set of what are body resilience techniques and stress reduction techniques.
Cool. So,
Yeah.
that's a great story and a great intro. Thank you. And
There's the long one.
oh, I love a long, love a long story. What it's
Thank
all
you.
about, right?
Thank you.
Um,
Yeah. Well, it takes a
well, I
while.
think sharing stories is like it's part of what I love about this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, okay, so yeah, golly gosh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I was just thinking about, like, I know you said, like, in your 20s you kind of felt you got into that self-help, and you found that yoga and meditation really served you. But
They did.
was there a point where you did feel like the pressures of life, was it just that
Yeah.
in the
Sorry.
20s, or did
Yeah. Yeah.
you have something going on later in life as well? I mean, 20 just seems so young for that to happen.
Yeah, yeah. I guess I was lucky that it happened early,
Yeah.
because, then it gave me an opportunity to really look inward, which is, where
Mm,
all the good answers come from. Yeah, my life has always been pretty busy. Like,
mm,
for whatever reason, a lot of interests. Austin, Texas is a huge tech hub and has been for many years now. A lot of high tech, and I worked in high tech for many years. Enjoyed it, but it was kind of the day job.
Mm,
Um, and you probably had people on your show and probably know this from your own life and work, is like, I feel like there's a real intersection between healers and creative people. And so I feel like I'm in that notch as well. And so for me, the creativity came from acting. Austin had a huge and still does a huge independent film scene and theater scene. And so that was a great way to express myself. However, what I'm noticing now is, how you can kind of look behind science 2020, you look back. I think what it did is it ultimately led me to move out to Los Angeles, um, where I discovered and did my first yoga training.
mm,
And I think that's really where it was leading me, because when I think about now the somatic experiences I was having in my body during acting, they were actually, it put me in a real fear state. Like, I don't know that it was the match for me in terms of the creativity that I was seeking. However, we can miss the mark and still, learn a lot and it still be great. And in that case, it really was. And I think um, the yoga teachers in LA were the ones I took with were top notch, just like amazing. Some great ones here in Austin now, but I think at that time they were largely out there because it had such a huge scene. Um, so where I was facing burnout is like giving my all to tech and then also having this other life that I was pursuing as well, and the stresses that came from performing in front of people for my personality type, um, which is maybe, I was just, it just kind of locked me in fear, in a sympathetic state in the nervous system, right? And so I was in Los Angeles, faced a huge burnout. Um, it's hard. It was hard out there. If I was going to do it, I wish I had gone earlier. But I was in my 30s at the time, and that's that's a hard time. It's changing a little bit, but and I look back on it, I was like, maybe if I had stayed, because they say it takes a good 10 years,
okay.
and yeah, but it wasn't meant to be at
Mm.
that time.
I,
So go ahead.
no, I was just going to say I kind of love that story because it's almost like you had these aspirations and you moved somewhere, but it was what do we call it? The dharma, the life path, like
Yeah.
it leads you, and it's not always where you expect. Like you go, I know, I want to be an actor, and you put all of
Mhm.
your, energy, life energy into it, move to a different place, and you're like, and then yoga pops up as a
Yeah.
solution to the ways that you were feeling. But and it's like, is that what the universe had in mind for you all along? But you just had to go that
Yeah.
direction to, yeah, I love those stories.
Yeah. Exactly. Like I do too. Like it does help me. I was like, no, I think, I mean, don't know for 100%, but
Mm,
I have a pretty good sense that that's what was going on. And especially, um, when you move somewhere else, you get perspective in a way that on where you grew up, and the good and the bad of where you grew up, and the holes, what was missing. So it gave me that too, which is priceless. I wish I could have learned that more easily. Like I'm a bit stubborn, but it was an important lesson to learn, and I think um, the teachers I took with, and that like you said, discovering that dharma,
mm,
that was what it was at. So
yeah.
hmm
Yeah, and the yeah, I think we all feel that like that about our life lessons, don't we?
yeah,
Whether
yeah, I
things
want to learn
happen for
those.
good or bad, it's like
Mm-mm.
in hindsight we can go, ah, that's what that was all about. But you're like, did I really have to go through all of that?
Yeah,
Wouldn't it have
yeah.
been just
I
easier for
think
someone
there are
to
some
tell me?
people, yeah, yeah. Some people, I think I get the spiritual information. I get it really well intellectually. Like,
Mm,
yes, of course, like, aha. And I think that when I was younger, I convinced myself that that translated to wisdom, but that's really just knowledge, right? Like I got the knowledge. I didn't have the wisdom, which is the experiential piece. And so, yeah,
mm, yeah.
I crashed pretty hard. I think maybe it was adrenal burnout, maybe it was just, um, I think when things move so fast, you're not processing them in an integrated way. And so in my case, it just feels like it caught up with me. And so I moved back to the Austin area and was able with yoga and meditation to really like process that through my body in an integrated way.
Mm.
And that served me. So
Do you oh God, I keep getting these questions on the tip of my tongue and then they've gone again.
no
Um,
worries. I get that too all the time. Yep.
what was it? What did it look like for you to when you had burnout? Like when you like, is it just exhaustion like next level? Is it an emotional? Is it physical?
Yeah, I think for me, burnout it is mostly a mental thing because what I've discovered about my mind, and I think this is true for most bright people, certainly women, because we're processing things more holistically, our brains do. So I look at it as like parallel processing. Um, my one of my minors was computer science, and there's serial processing, and I guess my experience has been that men can process more linearly. They
Mm,
can compartmentalize and process more linearly. Women have maybe a more 360 approach. There's certainly value to both. I'm not I think the masculine is extremely important, and men and the masculine, let me say. But I think some people just have, depending on what's going on in their brain or their makeup, and yoga actually speaks to this, will just have more going on in their mind, just like it just circles more quickly. And I think my mind has natively just a lot of that noise. um because in talking with my sister, she's, and I mean, we share a lot of the same DNA, but her makeup, or either her makeup or her uh obviously what she's been through, like she's not put herself through so much, like she's just much more like, hey, you don't have to do everything kind of to me. She doesn't have that. She's like, yeah, I mean, I get a lot of thoughts. And so then we would run down our thought list of like the last, we did an exercise where it's like the last minute, and she's like, oh yeah, you have a lot more, and it's just like it can be random stuff like a song lyric, and then a to-do list, and then a memory, and so, meditation will address that, because with
mm,
the noting practice, you can just note the thoughts that come in. But, for whatever reason, I think mine, it's naturally there. And then if you put stress on top of that, then they won't shut off, so, and then you just deal with an exhaustion of a mental exhaustion. And for me, that would lead to a lot of anxiety, because if you're if mentally you can't be there to like make the decisions in life, then that's scary.
yeah, right.
So
Wow.
yeah, so I think for me it's more mental, because my body is pretty strong. I take good care of it. So, and I think that's also just my makeup, and maybe my family's like we're kind of a robust, we're not a sickly family. So I never had to deal with that.
Mm,
So for me, it hits me more mentally, and then also like in the heart, like because the heart and the chakra system, it's the mid, it integrates upper and lower.
right.
And so and to lose heart on something is to lose courage, right? To be discouraged. And so, yeah, those two go hand in hand. So that's the burnout piece for me.
Mm,
Um, so I just need practices that just kind of calm that and get me back into the heart. And just reassuring, um, you know, I would say, because what I was finding with yoga, the way I was practicing it, which was hatha, the physical form of yoga, and they have other forms, um, is in the West, it got to be kind of a contact, not a contact sport, but like a,
yeah.
and that didn't, as I was getting older in my 40s, that just wasn't serving me anymore. Restorative is fantastic yoga for me. I love that, or yen, but sometimes don't have time or able to carve out the time to go and take those classes. So I was trying to approximate that, but with the work, the information, the research that I had done on the vagus nerve.
Yeah.
So
So
yeah.
you've spent a whole bunch of time in this kind of world of yoga and meditation, and you've taken it into those sort of more corporate places that
Mhm.
you've had some experience in corporate. Yeah. So
Yeah. Oh yeah.
and so I'm just curious, like over 20 years you've been doing that. How, how has it changed, or is it changing, or are things the same? Are they getting worse? Like,
I don't know. I don't.
are people becoming more aware of the necessity to downregulate to manage their stress? Because I feel like for a lot of people it's kind of like a badge of honor. Like if you're busy and you're stressed and you're working hard and you're doing all of the things, then you are worthy, kind of thing. And if you're
Yeah.
not doing those things, then maybe you're not living up to the standard that's
Hmm.
expected of you.
Yeah,
Have you seen that
I think that
change over the last 20 years?
I do think it is. I just wanted to address really quickly.
Mm,
I loved what you said. Like you talked about the do and the doing. Um, and there's that model of like you do be and then do and then have, right? So it's
mm,
like, who do you want to be? And we're just not educated on how to really think about that. Like, who do I want to be?
mm,
And that, in this moment, in this life, and that's where like intention setting comes in, but then also I think that's also where self-care, commitment to self-care comes in, is like, okay, because for better and worse, like if I try and do too much and like push through, I go a little nuts, frankly. Will not lie. My husband can attest. Like he's like, "Oh, you're doing too much right now, aren't you?" And I was like, "As a matter of fact, I am." Yeah. So he's like, "Well, you need to go walk your walk." And because um I feel like as humans, as spirits, um, when we get in touch, this is the B element, like
mm,
when we're in touch with the enormity of who we are, um, you're like, wow, I have so much to offer. I am this light. I am, made in the image of the creator, whatever that looks like, for you. Um, and so I have all this to give. And so we automatically want to do. And so, then we get on the do loop that way. And then if we see other
mm.
people doing, then the do loop gets faster and faster. So, um, yeah, just all the doing. Can you remind me what your question was?
Oh, I would just ask you if you've seen a change in the way that people
The change.
approach the, like it, especially in corporate, but in general, I guess, like with the people that you work with.
I mean, I think that there, especially in HRs of some of the larger companies, especially the ones based in California that are also here in Austin. I've worked with, Apple and Facebook Meta and Amazon, and they're all, West Coast companies. They will at least have like well-being coaches, or, they will and they'll have like I have friends who also work at Meta, and they really do a lot to try to get them into wellness summits and make that available, and have committees on mindfulness and yoga classes. I do think that that is definitely different than when I started in tech. So
Mm,
I definitely think it's changing. Um, However, I think what's also changed is, with the internet and how everything is so, knowledge is so easily available, and with streaming and all of that, right? Like it just, I think that takes its toll on our minds, because we're at screens
mm.
all day.
Oh, totally.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, some stuff is coming in that way. And
Mm,
so um, I I think it is changing, but I think there are some challenges that we're having to deal with now that obviously we haven't ever had to really deal with before. So, but I'm encouraged by what I see. Definitely. It makes me happy to see these companies, because I think they're setting the standards now. They're multi-billion dollar companies.
mm.
Smaller companies cannot necessarily afford that, but I think it hopefully will percolate down, and it will become less expensive. But and I think what's also great is you're seeing a lot of online platforms that will offer some, well-being
Yeah.
coaching
Yeah.
and so forth. So yeah,
Yeah.
I'm encouraged. I am. Today I am. Sometimes I'm like, oh, but again, when I can do these sort of practices, like you just get back to a state of kind of, it's not just equanimity, but it's an open-heartedness where it's
Mm,
like, where it doesn't have to, it's okay that it may be changing slowly, because
mm.
that's the most permanent changes, is like when you do it step by step, and you can be like, it's gonna be okay. Like
Yes. Yeah.
we're
Yeah.
we're
Yes.
hopefully making strides.
Probably the internet has something to do with that as well, because we're so much more exposed to like people who are successful online, and it's like these, I grew to this, this big company within this amount of time, and we're seeing all of that. Like, we're being fed that, and so we can kind of feel like
Yeah,
we need to do it. Everything needs to happen now. So yeah, it can
yeah,
feel a little bit disheartening when you might have a, I don't know, like I'm just using this as an example, a group of, 20 people that are coming to a class, and one person starts to integrate something new into their lifestyle. You're like, what do you mean? Like, but those are the steps we kind of need, aren't they? It's like if you're making any positive impact, however small it might seem at first, it's got the potential to increase and grow.
yeah. Agreed.
Just
Agreed.
just wondering, like on a, so probably more on an individual level, like when you're coaching someone, compared to like a corporation taking a bit of a, representing wellness within their organization, that kind of,
Mhm.
the attitude of the CEO or of the entrepreneur, or like, is it, do you get the do you get the feeling like there's more of a conscious leadership movement happening? Do you know what I mean? Rather than someone who's busy and stressed thinking, oh well, I better do it because I'm busy and stressed and I need to improve my health, which is where I've come from as a
Yeah,
personal trainer. We have often had people in the past, that their doctor told them they've got high blood pressure or whatever, they've got to start exercising, but they don't necessarily really desire to do it, so they kind of come because they have to.
yeah,
Do you get the different? Do you
yeah,
see that there's a, do you,
yeah.
a change in that kind of
Um,
mentality as well, or not? Well, that was a kind of a
I
bit of a
love this
long,
because
long
no,
convoluted.
it's a great question. Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, and you can probably speak to this. Like, um, so I coach like professionals. I don't specialize in CEOs.
Okay.
Um, just so you know, but I
Yeah.
coach like the high achieving professional, which managers and up,
Mm,
um, and even people starting at in their careers and also some stressed out moms who were like, I thought it'd be so much easier to not have to work, but because our society and the pressure we put on ourselves, like we want to work, we want to be contributing, and that's part of what it is to be human, because that contribution, but the big stress I see for moms is that they because being a mom is in and of itself not a hugely validating job. Especially when they're teenagers, and I speak from experience. So just like, it's not, it is and it should be like it's one directional. You give to them. And later, hopefully you get back in the form of a well-adjusted
mm,
human, who, can care for themselves and so forth. But um, I was reading on CEO leadership because I am interested in the leadership space and the executive space. A lot of them just want, and you've probably seen this, like a lot of them just want to be told what to do.
mm,
They just okay, I know I need to do this, so and that's a little different than sort of a coach. A coach is, trying to now in I think in physical training, that's different.
mm,
Because okay, you're there and really the art of it is you've got to figure out a way to tell them what to do. So, but not to where it's so much that they just start pushing back, or if they do, you help them overcome that, right? In coaching, you're trying to help them find the answers. It's a different kind of partnership. So I love that question so much because I've found some people really just do want to be told what to do. And so my job is just to let them realize that that's what's happening, like, hey, um, you know, it may be that you're so used to it, but the long-term answers and changes you want to make aren't necessarily going to be ones that someone tells you what to do. It again has to come from the inside. So
mm,
then, like, and you've probably seen that, like people who are forced to take up exercise, if they don't find one that they like, eventually they'll abandon it. Like it has to be part of who they are. Or if they're just super committed to getting healthy, then that can be overcome. But um so I do my best not to stay out of telling people what to do, but there's a lot of crossover, and some people want to be told that, and I have to redirect and be like, well, let's explore this differently, differently, because it's ultimately, because I think the way the human ego and the mind is set up is that it has to be finessed a little bit, because for a while you'll be like, okay, I like being told what to do. And there are some benefits if going in the contract is that, like with a personal trainer, and even with a coach, like some executives just be like, okay, I want you to come and drill me and, be super hard on me. Um, that's not necessarily my approach in coaching, but I have seen it be effective. But I think with this finessing, like, because eventually I think there'll be maybe some resentment over being told what to do.
mm.
And then there'll be the inevitable pushback. So yeah, I don't know. I hope that answered the question.
I think so.
Yeah, I think I touched on it in there somewhere.
Yeah, it's I find that, well, definitely with physical, physical coaching someone, training them, you if they do just like being told what to do, because I've got some clients who are just like, I don't remember what I did last week, compared to some
Yeah.
that are completely like, yeah, this is what we did and I can't remember. But like finding the ways for them to feel like they're the one, well, to start making the decisions for themselves, right? Answering the
Yeah.
questions.
Yeah.
What did you do last week? How did it feel? Like, where do you want to go with this kind of thing? I think that can happen
Yeah.
probably in what you do and in the, yeah, the exercise world.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. So, but I mean, I definitely think when you get to CEO, executive levels, they do have to execute no matter how they're feeling.
Yeah.
So they don't, and they're trained. And I think I have several friends who have MBAs, and she's like a VP in tech, and in business school, she was like, well, yeah, you're just trained to be effective, to make, I think that it's training in there to make decisions no matter how you're feeling. But long term, I think you can do that long term, but there's a compartmentalization that has to
Yeah,
happen as a
totally.
result.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a
So,
bit of a trade-off, isn't there?
mm-hmm.
All right. I feel like we're getting close to that special topic.
Oh, doing the
I
big
would,
finish.
so we're not finished yet. No, I
Mhm.
don't, I want to make sure
Good.
we've got
No,
enough time
good.
for this
Yeah.
special topic. Um, so you, you've brought your, through your own personal studies and through what you've been doing for the last 20 years as a yoga teacher and a meditation teacher, you've kind of brought these things together to create tools to support your clients in those kind of high performing roles, so that they can get more fulfillment, right? So that they can
Hmm.
actually tap into like their full potential in those roles. Because
Hmm.
like you said, there can be those sort of that mentality of it being like, this is how I do it, and they're trained to do it, and it's all very like in the head, go for it, mental. But at the end of the day, like we said, there's a trade-off. We hear
Mm.
stories also of people who feel unhappy, even though to the external person it might seem that they were very successful. They've got the money, they've got the job, they've got all of the things, but they still feel unfulfilled. And so
Hmm.
you've kind of created this coaching, I imagine, to kind of help to support people in their health, because people die from stress, let's face it. Even though
Yeah.
it's not really very well acknowledged, it's like a big one. um, Using your yoga and meditation and drum roll. Well,
Yeah.
the ventral branch vagus nerve activation, toning.
Yeah, there's a lot of terms of art out there for it. I guess, activation kind of is a misnomer. I like toning,
Mm,
but people are like, what do you mean toning? But it's also, if you think about muscle toning, you're building the ventral branch of the vagus nerve. So I think toning I like a little better because people are in stress, they don't want to activate, you don't need to activate or stimulate, you
mm,
need to regulate, which is to help it come to a more equalized state of, and what I mean between that is, there's just an overview, the autonomic nervous
yes.
system, and then there's the sympathetic state, which is, I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole on this, but I think it's safe to say it's fight, flight, or freeze. It's
Yep.
that stress state. And
People are
we're
some
constantly,
people are so used to it, right, that they don't, sorry to
yeah,
interrupt you, that they
no,
don't know
no,
that when they're not in that state, they don't know what to do themselves. They
yeah,
almost feel more exhausted when they're
yeah,
like Yeah. Resting makes them
Yeah,
agitated because they're so used to that adrenaline, cortisol to get them going.
yeah, totally,
Sorry.
totally. I
In-
That's no, it's spot on. And I when you said adrenaline and cortisol, I got excited because what, I've noticed with people, some people have more of a cortisol response, and some people have more of an adrenaline response. The cortisol is it's the when you know you're going to be under like long, it's kind of like it long-term stress,
Mm,
the higher cortisol levels. A lot of times you see like the chronic ones or the people who are under kind of chronic stress for
yeah.
whatever reason. That's not necessarily just their jobs. It's, maybe they have a food allergy or something,
Right. Yep.
something like that. Whereas adrenaline one, that's kind of, because that's linked to dopamine so much and
Yeah.
that
Right.
that feeling, yeah, in the brain. So that I'm sorry, I just wonked on that, which is
No, it's
totally
good.
off topic, but I get
No, not
excited about,
really.
yeah.
No, I think that's a really
Well,
good,
right.
a
No, not
really
totally.
interesting way to differentiate them actually, because I just always throw them in together. But yeah, that's
Yeah, I think I tend to have more adrenaline responses. Like I can, when under stress, I can be like, I can be kind of,
yeah,
kind of
yeah.
twitchy. And I think that is an adrenaline
Mm.
response, more of an adrenaline response than a cortisol. Like a cortisol, I don't think they get as flinchy.
But it's just
But there's,
long, low grade
yeah,
stress.
yeah, and
And it
like
could
the
be lack of
cortisol belly.
sleep and yeah, poor diet, not exercising, like as you said,
Yeah,
allergies, like yeah,
yeah, food
environmental
allergy.
stuff. Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, we're under a lot of we definitely have a lot of things that can contribute to that. But
Mm.
so back to
Can you,
sympathetic.
yeah,
Oh, yeah,
okay. I was just going to say, could you kind of talk us through the ventral nerve, the vagus nerve,
yeah,
sorry, the
yeah, yeah,
vagus nerve. I know you've talked about the sympathetic and the parasympathetic, but like
yeah,
what is the vagus nerve? Like, where does it come from? Where does it go to? What does it run
yeah,
through?
totally. Yeah, it runs through it all. So it's cranial nerve 10, and
Okay.
it starts at the base of the brain. And the Latin translation for vagus is wandering, and they call it that because
Mm,
it's one of the longest, if not the longest nerve, is cranial nerve in the body, ones that originate in the brainstem. And it runs through like it provides or nerve endings come off of it that run through the face, the throat, the lungs and the heart, and down in through the viscera, so the intestines.
wow.
So it's long.
Mm,
um, and so the body informed resiliency work, the technique I created, it involves a lot of self massage, that you massage those nerves, and it helps, it can work backwards. And just the, massage in and of itself, and the hands are extension of the heart energy, sort of that healing energy.
okay. Yeah.
Yeah, doing that. It has the effect of relaxing you there, but the underlying science of it is that it's actually toning that ventral branch. And the vagus nerve has two branches. The ventral is the front, and then there's the dorsal, which is the back. Um, Apparently, the dorsal, it gets more activated or toned. I don't know if yeah, maybe toned. Let's say activated in more of sympathetic work. So, or it may just be a default, like that's the one that is more active. And so we have to consciously tone this ventral branch of the vagus nerve, and high ventral vagus nerve tone is like high muscle tone, right? It's a good thing. It means that you've been, working it, but I guess I would say working with it, because again, work is in our society, it's like, oh, effort, effort. Whereas, I mean, there's a little bit of effort, but it actually feels relaxing, like you're
Mm.
not over efforting.
How do we
Yeah.
know if it's not toned. I feel like I've heard someone someone who was a gut specialist talking about how you can tell if it's working well or not based on whether you have a gag reflex. Is that a thing? Or maybe
Oh
that's to
gosh.
do with the digestive.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if that is the case. So through the research, so back to yoga real quick.
Mm,
What I was noticing, and I think what really made me and vagus nerve, ventral branch, we were going to be besties, is the yoga I was trained in, we would do an invocation, a chanting
mm,
invocation class. Every time I would do that, I would start yawning and my eyes would start watering. And I would look around and they were like, it wasn't really happening to other people. And I talked to my teacher and they're like, no, that doesn't really, but okay, it's probably, I just thought, okay, maybe there's something about it. And this is true that it was oxygenating my brain, so, when you, at least for me, when I start oxygenating, I will start yawning.
mm,
And years later, there's an expert on this work, Stanley Rosenberg, and he's written a book about the vagus nerve. And so sighing, yawning, and swallowing all mean that when you're in the context of this work, um, and I think in general too, it means that your ventral branch is coming online. Because if you think about it, like you can't really yawn when you're in fight or flight. It's not,
mm.
you're just like focused. And same for sighing and swallowing. So
Okay.
anytime that those are experienced, I I think it's a good indication. It certainly is for me that you're starting to tone that vagal nerve. In terms of knowing when it's not toned, I would think the gag reflex is probably um, a good clue because uh, I think a lot of that comes from if your gut is tight,
Mm,
maybe you can't, it could lead to like feeling nauseous and gagging easily.
mm,
Um, Another like gag reflex, I guess if you smell something bad,
right.
that can cause the gag reflex. So I don't know, I haven't looked at the gag reflex. I mean, I would
Mm,
say in general, I think people could do more to surrender to this work and tone that branch. I mean, because I feel like it's both cumulative in that, over time it helps you deal with stress responses better, but then it's also you can do it even if you haven't done it before and get results from it, where you just feel like, and I always tell people it's like, it's not, again, it's the small steps. Like if you feel 5 or 10% better, you feel 5 or 10% better,
yeah,
like
well, it's
that's
going to make you
valuable.
want to do it again, right? If you feel better,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Yeah. Mhm.
So you've
Yes, exactly.
developed this particular toning practice,
Mhm.
and
Um,
is it like just holding in those particular areas? Is there massage? Is there chanting
yeah.
as well?
Yeah. Well, so body informed resiliency does not include chanting. What I found with chanting, so chanting usually scares people because they're like, great, I'm gonna have to light incense and sit cross-legged for a year, right? Um, but one of the fastest ways to activate or to tone the nerve is to you can make sounds and this happens like people feel better when they start singing their favorite song,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
I mean, that is the power of both music, because music is like otherworldly, but they're actually participating, and that is giving it that like yay, double, boost there. But chanting Om especially,
Mm,
because Om is like a primordial just it's supposed to, how I look at it is it's kind of like the backbeat of the universe, like you're tapping into something greater. But if that's too woo, just giving it a try, practically speaking, you're just gonna feel better, you know.
Mm.
So that's a and I've even had clients where I'm like, it's gonna sound a little crazy. Because a lot of people, it's like vocalizing, especially women, like using the voice, right? Just vocalizing it is a bit scary for them, but I was like, okay, if you can't do that, then start by just doing it silently
Mm.
and see what it does. And I've had good results, and I've had clients have good results with that. But um, I do have a chanting course, but body and
Okay.
form resilience. I would say the foundations of that, the big one is diaphragmatic breathing, because, and you probably know this well, but most people we don't know how to really, the thing about breathing with the diaphragm is what it does is it causes a flare, the ribs flare, right? And you just are able to bring, and it takes a little bit of work, and especially if you're stressed, because the muscles in the ribs are intercostal muscles, right? And they're going to be, if you're stressed, then they're, tight. So if you bring, if it once you warm up, and you just get more oxygen into your lungs. So, and then it's super empowering. And because the vagus nerve, it provides some nerves to that area by, really consciously breathing like that. You're stimulating those nerves, which is working kind of backwards to tone the ventral branch. So, foundationally, it's a huge piece, and people just feel better, even if they're resistant to it, because a lot of times meditation, the thought of meditating is very scary to people. But most anyone will be like, okay, you're teaching me the mechanics of breathing, like I can, it's practical, I
Yeah.
can that, and so forth. And they can really feel like it's empowering to feel your lungs open, like you're like, because most of us aren't, we don't
No,
breathe,
right.
we nipple up to clavicle,
Which is
which is
all
a
that kind of stress, kind of, that's sort of sending the message, isn't it, to the rest of your system that you're in fight or flight. It's like
Mhm.
that short, quick. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Wow.
totally. And yeah, it is and there's a reason it's fine for us to do that, because it does promote a kind of an alert state, which
Right.
we need to get through most of the conscious things that, we're doing during the day. That's fine. It's just, again, what's the trade-off and how do you balance? And so to really feel a sense of reconnecting with kind of your purpose and your being, I think diaphragmatic breathing is a crucial first step. So that's huge. And then I also, another big piece is elongating the side bodies, because we sit all day,
Mm.
so up, down, they crunch down. And then of course we don't feel very empowered,
Yeah.
like we're not, so opening up those and moving cerebral spinal fluid. And then really the self massage, I think, is one of the most favorite pieces. There's hand massage, and throat massage, and the facial massage, scalp massage. And it sounds kind of weird. You're like, well, why don't I just go to a masseuse? But in cases where you're like, I'm feeling really stressed out, it's super empowering to know I have this practice, I can do it on my own. I just need 5 minutes, alone. And even just to breathe or do seated cat cows, huge, and stretching the side bodies. And then there's also eye work. So because the vagus nerve, excuse me, the ventral branch, their nerve it's a kind of a big nerve, then it shoots off other nerves, and it's right near the optic nerve.
Okay.
So when you move your eyeballs in a certain way, it also tones there. And again, for me, how I know it's working is I still get the eye watering, I still yawn, and then swallow and sigh. And, like sighs, like when you sigh, you're like, ah, like that's a contented thing,
Yeah.
right? Like that's a release and a surrender thing. It's so intuitively it makes sense.
Mm.
Mhm.
When when people come to you for coaching, do, is it because they have acknowledged that they are stressed, they need help? Or is it curiosity? What's going on for your clients?
Well, it's usually that stress is getting in the way of them reaching a goal.
Uh-huh.
Like they'll be like, I go to do something and it's either work or it's a personal goal. And I'm just too tired,
Uh,
or my mind is blank, or I sit down to do it and I can't do it. So those are obstacles. Um, but what they suspect is, that their stress level is also, so it's a goal, but it's also maybe one of the goals is just to enjoy life more, or, you know, um, be more present. It usually does have like they are looking for a more, they've tried other things, or they're doing quite well, but they can't get to the next level, and it's because they're perceiving or feeling a lot of stress in their bodies. So it's too and then there's other, like, so I get them in maybe or I do get them in a lot, like with, okay, here is this work, this will help with the relaxation. It's not a huge commitment. It can be done, 5 or 10 minutes, and it's active, and then once they're doing that, we can, you know, look at, their productivity and accountability, and there's definitely hacks there. There's
okay.
journal to do, and I have a whole process there, and that's I'm working on content for creating a new course on that piece, kind of the productivity piece.
Yeah, cool.
So, just to there, and a lot of the productivity has to do with energy management, because so much of life is managing energy, right?
Mm,
So, and not beating up on yourself when, like, like you were saying, there can be a lot of things at play, like bad sleep, or if you have a food allergy, and not necessarily making excuses with those, but realizing they could be at play. So especially like if you didn't sleep well, or you've had a rough week with a lot of deadlines, like you need to be in maintenance mode. You're not going to be in conquer the world mode. You know what I mean? You're not going to be uber productive in terms of like it's so easy. So the maintenance mode you drop down to, and then there's, ways to just keep moving. I think of just keep swimming and finding Nemo, but yeah, so maintenance modes is hugely important.
yeah, right. Yeah, that's a really that's a like it's so simple, isn't it? Like when we can't always be like full on going for gold. Like a lot of it is just that slow, steady, stable, consistent maintenance. So
Yeah.
that when we are ready, we've got the backup. What
Yeah. Yeah. And
what
it's a huge part of life.
what kind of results do you see in your clients? Like, what do you see these massive shifts in not only their physicality, their stress levels, their productivity, but like in do you see some shifts in their like perspective on what's important, anything like that going on?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. I think, with coaching, so my minimum is 3 months. And then I have your long programs as well, in terms of one-on-one coaching. And, usually what happens is they'll buy a course first and they'll like
Mm,
that and then reach out for that. So, yeah, I mean, I do there have been there always it's always, or not always, most of the time it's quite subtle, um in that they just get downloads and awarenesses and perspectives in terms of their ability to relax and be in the moment. That is the more subtle pieces. And then in terms of their productivity, because especially with the maintenance mode, they just feel like, oh, I really am productive. Like they
Mm,
reconnect to this knowledge of and this knowing of how much we actually really do every day. They don't dismiss that. And then that builds confidence so that they can, they keep moving in that direction and towards a goal. And, if you're moving, taking step by step, it's that the plane analogy, like you point your the nose of the plane to where you want to go. Eventually you're going to get there, like maybe you have to slow down, maybe there's turbulence, but you will get there. Um, so I've had a client who really wanted to write a book, and she has written a book. It's a small book, but she's
it's a
been
book.
putting that on for years. It was a YA book. And so to see her be like, I can't believe, I mean, I've been putting this off for years. And every time I would sit down, it'd be my background's also in writing, professional writing. And so that's probably been one of my favorites because it kind of like it's an intersection of many of my skills. So, but yeah, she wrote that book.
Yeah,
So
cool.
that's pretty great.
We've cracked the hour, and I'm conscious of your time, but I would like to ask you. Uh, I'm going to try and make this kind of like a simple question, but I don't know. I can't make any promises. We'll just see how it comes out.
Sure.
So I'm just thinking about like I've been exploring this kind of intersection of spirituality and health and where they come together, and I'm kind of sort of feeling more like there's these we're able to link back to like real ancient techniques and practices and bring them into the 21st century working life and use them to support our health, like for example meditation for the
Mm,
stressed executive. And I've just been exploring like what are the connections between this sort of ancient wisdom, the spirituality, and modern day life and health.
mm.
So I would love to hear if you have any insights on that, because I feel like you've kind of touched on, that the bigger picture, people's purpose, but also you're working
Mm.
in that space of, people's health in this 3D, in this three-dimensional reality. So yeah,
Yeah.
I just wondered if you had any insights or inklings
Mm.
around that. Yeah, not a very
Yeah,
simple
I love this
question.
question. So if I start going way off, you just be like, come on, let's rein it back in. Because this just touches on a little bit of cosmology, right? Like how the
Right.
cosmos was designed. Um, my yoga training was in Tantra, and Tantra in the West gets reduced down often to a lot of sexual
Mm,
practices. But actually, Tantra itself, like one of the translation is tools for liberation. And the tantrikas back in Kashmiri Shaivism, which I forget when the time was, but they had a lot of time, this sort of priestly class, let's call it that, or caste, they devoted themselves to liberation, much like you would see maybe clergy living, maybe the nunhood or the priesthood, and so they devoted a whole lot of time to these practices, and they're very rigorous practices. If you want to go that route, there is definitely that. But it also had a part of it where it could help um, tools for householders, but it has a beautiful cosmology about like, who we are in the scheme of things, and particularly the Shakta set, and Shakti is sort of the divine feminine, but feminine as creative power.
Mm,
A lot of times in the West, the feminine is like where it's more receptive, the receiving and the nurturing. It's actually everything in the this tantric philosophy, but it is power. So it creates us and then dwells within us and lives with in us, and all our creativity comes from that. And then it's actually the masculine, which is the Shivik or Shiva, that is stillness, that is the emptiness. And we have both energies in us. They're outside of us, and then they're in us. So when we talk about the ancient technologies, I kind of come from, or ancient practices, I come from that
mm,
perspective. So that's why, like, all of this movement, which is daily life, is divine.
right.
It's not, even our stress levels are divine. Our body is divine. It's amazing our body responds that way, because in truly dangerous situations, that's when people come in and say, I just knew what to do. Like, also divine. I mean, that's just amazing. The chronic part of it, not great,
Mm,
but all of this, the interest and the concern to address that, divinely creative. So, I just think it's wonderful. We have that, and we've got all this motion going, and then we need stillness.
mm,
Have to be both. And we have the capacity for both in us. So that helps me when sometimes I can still definitely get into like pushing myself, because that is important. That is, effort is important. It's the be do have, right? You need both, that doingness, but you also have to be the being. And so, yeah, I think that they're both sacred, they're both divine. So yeah, they're super important. I hope that answered your question. I
I
might have
think
just
so.
gone way off. So, but
It's
but
a
yeah.
well, I'm thinking of then, and it's something that I'm becoming more aware of in more recent times. Is like that sense of thinking about all of the things you've got to do, and like being in that, you can be in that kind of anxious, stressed, like overwhelmed, depending on
Yeah.
where you're at. And then it's that bringing it back to, hang on a minute, let's come back to the heart. What's my heart
Mhm,
doing? What
mhm,
does my heart say? Like just that simple kind of like drawing your attention back inside, and
mm.
and that reminder, it's all right, all is well. Like
Yeah.
the external reality is just kind of like one thing. Um,
Yeah, I like that too, because um, you know, circumstances outside of you will change.
mm,
You know,
mm.
my dogs are getting excited about this. Um, and really all you have is really what's inside of you, because you can lose whatever's outside of you,
Mm,
um, and then recreate it, because that's our nature, is to be divinely creative. And so, and even if, even people who feel like they're off the path, or who've maybe made wrong decisions, they were still, that is still a divine act, because it's creativity.
right,
Um, they're optimal divine acts, and then some that are, less sustainable, less supportive of, or life affirming. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. Like, the stillness helps you get into your heart.
mm,
Some people, what I was noticing is that, for a lot of people in the West, we're trained in the doing very
mm,
well. We're very good at that. We've built amazing civilizations based on that. Not just the West. I mean, certainly in the East and Southeast Asia, they've done that as well. But you know, we've definitely, I think we're good at doing. And the being just needs to be stressed a little bit as well. And I think we're seeing that, and I think that's super, super duper important.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Oh, look at you. How
Yes.
cute.
She's a troublemaker, so I'm gonna just sit her up here. Sorry, I
Oh,
hope that's
no,
okay.
absolutely. I love a dog.
Yes, yeah, yes, I know.
Uh,
Yeah,
wow.
so
Thank you
did
so
that
much.
answer?
Yeah, I think
Mhm.
that was, yeah, it
Okay.
was a really beautiful way to end the conversation. I've really appreciated your time. We've
You,
got
thank you.
your details in your profile in our guest directory. So we can direct everyone there. There's links to your website, to your socials. Is there anything in particular you would like to lead the listeners to at the moment, or do you think that's kind of the web?
Yeah, I mean, for new people, usually what I'm finding is working best is that they go, if they'll go to my website, they'll get the pop-up,
Yep.
and for their email, I will send them, it's a 20-minute guided program. It has meditation in it. It's called Your Daily Boost.
Oh, great.
And yeah, I called it that because, like, for people who are down at this level, again, it's for me, I work in 5 and 10% because I feel like that's a
Mm.
good building block. If I don't love it when people, you're going to feel 100% better, like, if you feel 5 or 10% better, you're gonna feel, it's powerful. And usually people feel a lot better. And so if you're feeling down here, it can get you to the next level. And if you're feeling great, it can get you to the next level. So, and I think just to be in a healing environment, you just get downloads, you get your next idea, you get a reconnection to who you really are, you get a connection to you're going to be okay. Everything is going to be okay. It's okay to take these moments of stillness in this divine chaos, of for yourself. And yeah, I've had a lot of good results. So, and then they'll go on the mailing list, and then I will, send them goodies as well.
Cool. Sounds
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Brilliant. All right. Well, we're going to make sure that we get all of that info in the show notes, so you'll be able to get the link for the website, and hopefully people will connect with you. I've loved our conversation. Sorry, I lost my thread a couple of times when I,
So I
I
love
had
it.
like these
I think
questions
that
that
was,
came in, and then I was listening, and I was like, "It's gone.
yeah.
Come
Yeah, I
back."
think that's just like the nature of the, like, space is created, like we created this like healing space,
Yeah.
and it opens things up, and then things kind of, turn that way. But I always think that's a good indication that it's a good conversation,
Yeah.
one that's, yeah.
Good. Great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. It's been wonderful meeting you. I really appreciate your time.
Same, same. Thank you.